Hi, and welcome to this overview of the new releases that I read that were published in May of 2023. I'm Olivia, your favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot. You're watching Random Olive Reads. First up, we have The Spinster and Mr. Scott by Jennifer HAYMORE. This is book one of the Highland Knights series. Now, this book is an updated edition of Highland Heat, which was published in 2015. The story takes place at the same time frame as the prequel novella, so I do recommend reading the prequel before you get to this one. Lady Grace is the daughter of an earl and a spinster who has escorted her sister Claire to the battlefield to search for Claire's husband. While there, Claire has made herself useful by caring for wounded soldiers. She meets Duncan, one of her brother-in-law's sergeants, and forms a connection with him. Despite the social class differences between them, they converse easily and quickly, and they fall in love pretty fast. This was a relatively quick story to read, with things progressing pretty predictably until we head into some treacherous territory. Her father disapproves. The men are working against some insurgent group, so there's a little bit of danger towards the end of this book. Earls Rush In by Jennifer HAYMORE is a standalone novel. Charlotte is about to accept a proposal to a man she doesn't love in order to save herself and her sister from being thrown out of their aunt and uncle's house. Now, the man in question seems harmless enough, but Charlotte's brother's longtime friend Finn believes the man to be a villain and rescues Charlotte by kidnapping her. Finn has kind of taken the responsibility to watch out for Charlotte after the death of her older brother, but the reader knows that he's been pining for her for ages and just doesn't think he's worthy. He's actually hiding a lot of secrets surrounding her brother's death, and we do get to learn about it in bits and pieces throughout the book. Now, the carriage that Finn uses to kidnap Charlotte runs into an accident, and then they get stranded in a snowstorm and find shelter at an inn where they have to be a fake married couple to protect her reputation. While they're there, they grow closer, and Charlotte realizes that she's attracted to Finn. However, this man has like the lowest self esteem imaginable and is still hiding secrets about her brother's death, so he feels he's unworthy. He decides, well, I'm going to help her find a suitable husband. They eventually leave the inn, they're back in London, but that villainous suitor is still hanging around and causing trouble. So there's a lot going on in this book that'll definitely keep the pages turning. Scandalizing the Scoundrel by Charlie Lane is book 9 of the Wicked Widows League series and also related to the Cavendish family series. Freddie is a quiet, unassuming, widowed viscountess with 2 young daughters. When she decides she wants to become a little bit more wicked, she decides she wants to have a tryst with the very handsome horseman, Grant, who works at her cousin's circus. Grant has been secretly pining for Freddie for a while and has been resisting her because he knows that he'll very quickly fall in love with her. He's worried about getting too attached because his stunt work could be dangerous and decrease his lifespan. Meanwhile, Freddie doesn't want any emotional entanglements or marriage because she doesn't want her daughters to suffer through the loss of another father-like figure. Both people are pretty clear they don't want anything more from each other, but it's also very obvious that they care for each other a lot, and their problems could sort of be solved if they were willing to risk having their emotions laid bare. And also Grant could like do less stunt work at the circus. Anyways, this was a fun addition to the Cavendish stories, and I always enjoy seeing a seemingly demure lady find joy. Queen Charlotte by Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes is the book adaptation of the Netflix series that takes place in the Bridgerton universe. Now, if you've watched the 6 episode series, you will see that the plot of the book follows much of the same. There's a few tweaks here and there to make it work as a book. Obviously, there's parts of the show that were left out of the book, and also the book includes a few bonus perspectives. We get whole chapters from Brimley's point of view, who is the Queen's man, and then the conversations he has with Reynolds, who is the King's man. This book reminded me that Julia Quinn's historical romance books fall pretty much on the light and funny side of the genre, And the book overall was not tear-inducing the way that the Netflix series was. Much of the dialogue is the same as the series, but it has a lot less emotional punch when it's not portrayed by the very talented actors from the series. For the romance novel aspect, we start off with Charlotte and her journey to an arranged marriage with the King of England, George III. While trying to escape the wedding, there's a little meet cute in the garden where he declares himself just George. And then we follow the trials of a husband who pretty much drops his new bride off in her own house while he runs away to a different one. We get a bunch of eavesdropping miscommunication here with George keeping secrets for the first half of the book, and these two spending a lot of time apart and in isolation. This book throws in some subplots surrounding Agatha Danbury, who is a newly elevated lady who is widowed and subsequently courted within the same book. Of note, the book ignores a certain side plot where she has a tryst with a certain lord that we meet in the Netflix series. Now, do you need to read this book if you've watched the series? No, the plot elements are exactly the same. However, it is nice to read some of the internal thoughts that the characters have. And basically, I'm just here for the Brimsley chapters. His thoughts and fears of everything he does being like a crime and a hangable offense is actually really hilarious. The Last Lord Standing by Diana Lloyd is book 3 of the What Happens in the Ballroom series. Headstrong daughter of an earl, Libby dances with a stranger at her birthday ball. Care is the second son of his second son, who is somehow tasked with keeping Libby distracted from other suitors while his friends are considering her as a potential bride. Care and Libby soon form a friendship of sorts and spend more time together. And this is another book from Diana Lloyd that has a lot going on in a short amount of time. What stands out here is Care's instant attraction to and respect for Libby and Libby's strength and independence. Now, despite all the chaos and drama surrounding them, I appreciated the connection between the two and their very lively relationship. Unladylike Lessons in Love by Amita Murray is book 1 of the Marley Sisters series. Now, Lila is the illegitimate daughter of an earl estranged from her sisters, and she grew up living with her father's first wife after her own parents passed away. Now, in present day as an adult, she runs a somewhat successful salon in London offering gaming and entertainment. Now, she has suddenly been accused of being Ivor's father's mistress and told to stay away from the old man. She's never been anyone's mistress, but Ivor seems to think the worst of her. We have some added mystery in the story when a former servant comes to Lila asking for help with her partner who is accused of a crime he didn't commit. And Ivor is somehow involved because it was his young cousin who was attacked. Honestly, the mystery solving part was the most interesting of this book. The romance seemed to kind of come out of nowhere, even though the attraction was obvious from the start. And so the romance part didn't particularly feel genuine. I don't know. I suppose we'll also learn more about those estranged sisters in future books, but I didn't get the feeling that this would be a very tight knit series. And while I don't usually comment on book titles, I don't actually see the connection between the title of the book and the plot. The Countess and the Casanova by Ginny B. Moore is book 2 of the Flower Sister series. We detour away from the Flower Sisters themselves in this book and follow Henry, who is Alex's best friend. So Alex is the guy from book 1. And so we follow Henry and his intermittent friendship with Ellie. This book is told in 2 timelines with the present day adventure that Henry and Ellie are taking to Italy and intermittent flashbacks to the time they've spent together at his mother's annual Christmas balls. Henry is known for being a dissolute rake, but really he suffers from insecurities related to his periods of darkness and his slowness of reading and writing. He hides that part of himself and carries on this facade of fun loving charm. Ellie is slightly awkward and curvy and overlooked by almost all gentlemen. She eventually marries an elderly earl that her father arranges for her and is soon widowed after a miserable marriage. Now, the widowed Ellie has a bit more freedom, so she attends art lectures and desires adventure. Henry arranges a trip for her to see Italy, but they need to pretend to be married to travel together. Now, this book had all sorts of painful pining and longing on both sides here, and it was such an interesting way to tell the story and unravel Henry's past actions. This one was an amazing book. I highly recommend it, and it goes really well with the first book of the series. Four Weddings and a Duke by Michelle McLean is a standalone novel. We have a socially awkward duke who turns a socially awkward wallflower into a duchess. Alex, the second son of a duke, never expected to inherit and would rather be working on his experiments in botany. However, he knows that he'll have to pick between three sisters to fulfill the agreement that his father made with their father. So it's sort of arranged marriage, but he does kind of get to pick out his bride. Lavinia is the often overlooked and shy middle sister who would rather read and hide behind potted plants than dance. When Alex comes to call in the sisters, he chooses Lavinia as his bride instead of the other, more socially outgoing sisters. From there, Lavinia is doing her best to arrange their social calendar to the Duke's benefit, while Alex is wondering why he's being dragged to all of these events when he should be working on his experiments. Add in a possibly nefarious rival and work partner who disparages Alex for spending time with his new wife, and we have our befuddled Duke doing and saying all the wrong things. I was definitely feeling most of Lavinia's heartbreak throughout this book as she's trying so very hard to be a good wife and Duchess to Alex. This was a really good book, and I really highly recommend it. His Study in Scandal by Megan Frampton is book 2 of the School for Scoundrels series. Alexandra is a widowed duchess out of mourning, and she wants to take charge of her life. She tears up her mourning gowns, she's shopping at a modiste that her late husband didn't approve of, and she is out to enjoy a night of pleasure at a hedonistic garden with a handsome stranger. Theo is a wealthy businessman who has just made a deal to possibly marry a duke's sister, but he wants to spend one last night at the pleasure gardens before officially meeting her. Theo and Alexandra meet there and spend a steamy night together before parting ways. Of course, who do you think is the duke's sister? Well, complications arise when they realize that Theo has been intended for Alexandra's daughter as a way for her stepson, the new duke, to cover the debts that he's incurred in the last 2 years. With the brimming attraction between Theo and Alexandra, it's obvious he can't marry her daughter, but they have to find a way out of this situation, or else the new duke will ruin Theo's business prospects and also leave Alexandra and her daughter destitute. We also get a fun little plot twist of how the daughter gets herself out of the blind, and I'm actually hoping that her romance happens somewhere later in the series. Thank you so much for watching this video. Links to all of these books are in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.